Hey guys, it's me again, Brandy, the not so happy to be called an alcoholic. Today's video blog is going to be about talking about my past. Now, if you've listened to my podcast, if you've met me in person, if you've heard me speak at all, you know that I don't count on my past as like I try not to let it affect my present, because our past is in the past, right? We can't go back, we can't change it. We've done things we regret, we've done things we're proud of, we have happy memories, we have sad memories. All these things are in the past for a reason. That means we've already lived through them, so why are we still trying to live through them today? Why are we still punishing ourselves for the things we did 10 years ago? Why are we still focusing on things that were so amazing 10 years ago that probably wouldn't be today? So my point is to go over my past so that you know where I started, you know the things I've been through, you know what has helped shape me to be who I am today. But those things, they don't define me, and they don't mean that I'm a certain person. They are just those stepping stones that have brought me to the place where I am today. So I am a 31-year-old woman. I live in India right now. I'm undergoing a treatment for fistula. These things I'm going to talk about later. Today, I'm going to roll back into a time. I was born in Idaho in the United States. Don't have any memory of it, but apparently, according to my parents, we then moved to Mississippi. I have 3 brothers, all older than me. I'm the youngest and only daughter in this family. At the age of 5, I was sexually traumatized by one of my brothers, and I share this not to put them under the bus, because they were a kid themselves and maybe they didn't know what they were doing. I share it because it's a part of who I am, and I blocked it out for so long, and I didn't know how to deal with it. He got sent away to live with somebody else, and life continued. I don't have that many memories of it, thankfully, though I do have a few that have came back since I've recognized that it happened. Fast forward to the age of 11. Here I am. I have friends. I'm living in Alabama. Life is great. We're kind of getting into the whole boy thing. And one day, swimming in the swimming pool, I got abused by a different brother. Sexually abused, sexually traumatized, whatever terminology you want to use. It happened. Again, I refer back to maybe he was a child and he didn't know what he was doing. Bottom line is, we all make choices, and we start making choices from a very early age, and shit happens, right? Part of my recovery has been to forgive, not necessarily forgive, but to accept. I accept that it happened. I shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I didn't. So many things. Bottom line is, I blocked it out. I blocked it out for about 6 years. I continued. I started overeating. I became this really large little girl who was scared, confused, and couldn't share this deep, dark secret with anyone. It was scary, and it was sad. And I didn't really tell anybody until I stopped drinking at the age of 27, because I was so ashamed of it, and it was so scary. And so now I share it because, we're never alone. We tell ourselves we're alone, and we tell ourselves nobody will understand, and that we should feel ashamed, because whose brothers do that to their sisters? But in reality, this is who we are, right? This is what we do, and this is what we grow from, and we learn from stuff, right? At the age of 16, after I blocked out these traumatic events, I decided that I needed to stop being a virgin and start having sex, because that's what 16-year-old girls do. I quickly discovered being a fat girl, which is what I labeled myself in my head, was not going to get me a boyfriend. So I started my journey into bulimia. I would eat, and then I would make myself throw up. And I would throw up after every meal, no matter if it was an apple or a hamburger. I had to throw it up. I couldn't stand the thought of food being in my stomach. It was horrible. And so I went from being almost 200-pound girl of 16 to being a 110-pound girl of 16. I was unhealthy. I was sick. But my head was telling me that I was beautiful, because I was what I labeled as skinny. You know, looking back, these experiences have kind of dictated what patterns I take as an adult. And I can find myself now as an adult taking similar patterns and doing things, and then looking back and be like, oh, so I did those things as a teenager. I did those things as a child. Food, throwing up, control, punishment. These things, they're kind of interrelated for me. I punished myself. I controlled myself. I did these things to create this feeling because I couldn't stand the way I felt on the inside. So I got that boyfriend. I had sex. Life was fantastic. At least that's what I was trying to convince myself, because I wasn't doing so hot in school. I was dropping out of school. I was moving out of my parents' house. I was creating this life that I thought was amazing. And you know what? I was just like, screw everybody else. I was going to live my life as I thought I should live it. And then life happens, right? I moved into an apartment. I had a best friend. I had a boyfriend. We were all a happy, like, family thing until the boyfriend and I started drifting apart, and I broke up with him, and then we went to Hawaii, and my best friend got arrested, and life changed. And I found myself in the situation of not knowing what to do. So what I did was I found myself a new guy. Here I was, this young, pretty girl, skinny, and I went and found the nearest guy that I could, and I launched myself into his waiting arms, and it was lust at first sight. It was beautiful lust, you know? The kind that you just, like, dive into. Because that's what lust is about. It's not about commitment. It's not about lasting relationships. It's not about love. It's just about sex. At least it was for me. It was sex. But I was drinking a lot. I had started drinking when I was 19, and I really loved drinking. I loved how it made me feel. And if I drank enough, I could throw up. So it was like combining the feeling of bulimia with drinking, and my life was complete in my head. Yeah, it's a sick thing to say, but it's the honest truth. We dated for about a month before I realized I was pregnant. And then a month later, I finally admitted that I thought I was pregnant. Or maybe it was just like 2 months altogether. It was so fast. July to October, my life changed. October of 2007, I found out I was pregnant. And being a young 19-year-old, I was adamant that I would not have an abortion. And that was my choice, you know? Hell be damned to anybody who was to try to argue with me, to try to convince me otherwise. I didn't care. I knew everything. I was invincible, and this was my decision to make. I didn't care about the dad. I didn't care about anybody except for my own self. And my own self wanted that baby because in my head, the baby was going to be the miracle of all miracles. And he was. I love my son. He's the most gentle, amazing soul, and so protective and so much like me. It's frightening at times, and I have no regrets. The only regret I can say I have is that I hurt somebody by making them feel trapped, and I put them in a situation that they couldn't control. It should have just, there's no ifs, ands, and buts. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? Bottom line, we all make decisions and choices, and we have to live with them. So after I had my son, I nursed him for about 3 months, and then I came to the conclusion that nursing sucks. I was 20 years old. I wanted to drink. I wanted to drink more than I wanted to breathe, more than I wanted to be a mom. I just wanted to drink, because when I drank, I didn't have to feel like I had screwed up my life or that my life was out of my control. I didn't have to feel anything except for like floating. Like everything was out of my control. So I drank. I became what us Alkies call a weekend warrior, drinking on the weekends, momming on the week, shipping my son back and forth to grandma's and grandpa's so that I could drink on the weekends. And then it got worse because if your drinking is like mine, it escalates. So what started out as a weekend warrior, drinking like a 12-pack a day, probably every day on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Then it started moving to Mondays and Thursdays, and then an occasional Wednesday. And then sometimes I would smoke weed because, weed mellows you out and helps the mood. And then like things were getting worse in my marriage because we had gotten married, and it wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't what I thought it should be. And then it just went on. It went on. I did things I regret. I'm always hesitant to share some of the worst details of what I've done because I don't want to put myself at risk. But let's just say this. I have, if I believed in angels, I have an angel that has looked after me my entire life, because anytime I was put in a situation where things could have gone really, really bad, I've been saved. And by situations, I mean during those weekend warrior binges while my son is safe away with grandma and grandpa, I would go out to a club. And I'm a blackout drinker, full on blackout. So I would drink, and then I would reach that magical point of oblivion where I would flip that switch of going from a relatively somewhat crazy normal brandy to alcohol brandy. And alcohol brandy was promiscuous and flirtatious, and oftentimes lost parts of her clothing and said things that she wished she didn't say and acted mean and crazy. And depending on who was around me, I was hurtful and mean. And then other times I was just so flirtatious. It was lucky that I never got raped. It went on like this until 2012. January 2012, my dad died. I was, 22, 23 years old. My dad is what I call my best friend. He was the closest person to me in this world. Some people would say like I have daddy issues. But bottom line, he was my best friend. So when he died, like I had this void in my heart because now I didn't have this confidant that I could call at all hours of the night to come get me or to tell him what's going on or tell him how much my life sucked. Now I had to deal like all alone. There was nobody else in this world that I could trust like I had trusted him. And yeah, my husband tried. I mean, we had our own issues, and my mom, bless her heart, did the best that she could, but nobody understood because it was different, because I'm special, and that's what my head kept on telling myself, that I'm special and nobody understands. So I started drinking around the clock. Morning, noon, night, didn't really matter. I just wanted to drink. As long as I kept drinking, those feelings, they wouldn't sink in. I wouldn't have to grieve. I wouldn't have to feel. I wouldn't have to cry. And January to August of 2012, I drank. And in August of 2012, I tried to kill myself. The coward's way out, some people say. And for me, it was more like this world at times can be unbearable. Those feelings, those thoughts, those actions, sometimes it feels like they can swallow you up. They can make you feel like they're so much bigger than you and you're invisible, and the only way out is to drink something so that you can swim through. And when you drink, you can't really swim through because you forget how to swim. So you're in this constant nonsense of a spiral that never makes sense, yet you keep trying it because you hope that it's going to be different this time. And it never is. It's never different. Ever. It's always the same thing. You lying to yourself, but it's never different. So I tried to kill myself. And once I took the pills and I called my mom and I was hysterical and told her what I did because I didn't want to die. I just wanted attention. I just wanted help. I didn't want to feel, but I needed help. but I didn't know how to stop. And so an ambulance got called and I got rushed to a hospital, and my son at the time saw me like that. And I would love to say that I never attempted suicide again and that I never did anything like that again, but I would be lying to say if that's true, because I did eventually. But at that point, I went to the hospital and I was talking to the nurses and telling them how depressed I was and how my husband and I didn't get along and life felt unbearable, but I didn't want to kill myself. I just needed help. And not one person at that time told me maybe I should stop drinking. They just told me I was sad and maybe talk to a counselor. And so 2007 to 2012, growing up, 1988 to 2012, life had many adventures, many challenges, many traumatic events. And I hope you guys stay tuned for the next episode, which will be 2012 till the day I quit drinking. So yeah, thanks guys.